All right, guys, it's time for another episode. It's time for pre-cals. What's going on today?
Hey, Jerry, we've got Dr. Michael Markus with us. He's a social psychologist turned entrepreneur with a passion for healthcare innovation. After transitioning from academia, Michael co founded Within Three, a pioneering social search platform connecting physicians, nurses, and patients within healthcare and life science organizations. Following Within Three success, Michael co founded Jennison IP Ventures, collaborating with Temple University to invest in respiratory medical device companies. His ventures include HGE Health, which developed a digital platform for remote COPD management, leading to an improved patient outcomes and reduced hospitalizations. HGE Health was acquired by Vapotherm. 2Z Medical, one of his latest ventures, has pioneered the first FDA-cleared medical device equivalent to CPAP for mild to moderate positional OSA. Today, Michael's the CEO of Green Key Health, the parent company of 2Z Medical. Green Key Health focuses on value-based care, offering a comprehensive sleep disorder breathing program that improves patients' lives and reduces healthcare costs by targeting high-risk individuals with sleep apnea and multiple comorbidities.
Wow, that's quite a bit. So it sounds like it's going to be very interesting to hear what he has to say about that. Emerson, I
Yeah,
think you have some experience in
yeah, I'm
that
looking
field.
forward to it. It's, selling positional therapy is a challenge. So it's going to be interesting to see where they're going with that and what they're thinking about. I spent about a year and a half with the night balance, and it's an interesting market. It's a tough market, and I'm excited to see where he's going and what they're thinking about.
All
Well, we'll
right.
see. I think the difficult part of any type of sleep apnea therapy is the reimbursement piece. And if the payers aren't covering it, that just sort of cuts you off from one particular channel, which is the largest channel, that gives you access to patients. So, living in that cash only world, can be a barrier. But, I think the one thing that he has in his, sort of advantage is that there's not a lot of competitors in that space any longer in the positional therapy side. So good for Zzoma.
Good for Soma, and I think it's good for for everybody as well because it gives another option for patients. All right, you guys ready?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Do it.
All right, on to the show. Now, a word from our sponsor, Medbridge Healthcare. Medbridge Healthcare is a leading provider of sleep lab management services and home sleep apnea testing. Medbridge partners with hospitals, healthcare systems, and medical academic institutions to offer comprehensive, fully integrated services for sleep disorders.
Sleep Tech Talk is sponsored by ReactHealth. Within our LunaPAP device line, each offering is FDA approved, encompassing CPAP, APAP, bilevel, and bilevel ST models. Our thoughtfully selected array of PAP interfaces and accessories complement our LunaPAP device line while accommodating diverse patient requirements.
Lights out.
Welcome, everyone, once again to another episode of Sleep Tech Talk, the sleep podcast with your hosts and friends, Emerson Kerr, Robert Miller, and me, Dr. Gerald George Mannikarote. Thank you again, folks, for joining us today on this episode. We can't thank you enough for all the shares, likes, the subscriptions, the support that you've given us in general since the time we started. This episode and this entire show is for you, and it's about you. And you were there from the beginning, and you continue to help us grow. And we thank you so much for that. A huge shout out to our sponsors. Huge thanks to them for making this happen and continuing to believe in us. We can't do this without them. So, folks, be sure to check out our sponsors. Now, with that being said, Robert, what's going on today?
Hey, Jerry, we've got Michael Markus with us today, PhD. He is the CEO of Green Key Health, and which is also the parent company of 2Z Medical. So we're going to learn about both companies and what they offer today. And Michael, we're glad to have you with us. We're excited to hear the story of how you got involved in the world of sleep medicine and how you've been able to carve out, sort of specific products and services that are available to patients who have sleep issues. So welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, and a pleasure talking to everybody.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your pathway to sleep. How did you get here?
So I am an academic by training. So I actually became a social psychologist way back in the day, entered academics, taught for a couple of years, but along the way, I always had an entrepreneurial streak. So if you ask me what I did when I was 18 years old, I actually, was selling T-shirts before going to college and doing various things. So when I was in academics, passionate about research, I was became an expert in social network and social network analysis. And then as I saw new technologies emerged, I thought what would be interesting would be apply that into the healthcare field. And so I developed a piece of technology, started my first company, left academics. And so did that and developed relationships with academic centers across the United States, and then exited that company. And then struck a deal with Temple Technology Transfer in Philadelphia. And then invested in a couple of companies, one of them being sleep, the other being in COPD, but same doctors. So I'm in the whole respiratory space.
Fantastic. We were able to get together with you in Houston at the National Sleep Meeting this year and learn a little bit about Zzoma. And you and I have had several different conversations about the Zzoma product and what 2Z Medical's, entry into the positional therapy space looks like. So will you tell us a little bit about the product? And I know that there's some advancements that are maybe they've happened or are on the horizon for the Zzoma product.
Sure, absolutely. Happy and excited to talk about Zzoma. So back in 2010, I met Dr. Sam Kratchman, who's the head of sleep at Temple University. And I also met his former fellow, Joe Crescetti, who's now at Abington Health. And in 2010, they introduced me to the product that they had developed 3 years prior. And Zzoma is today a Class 2 medical device. It's used and have FDA cleared to treat mild to moderate positional OSA. But when I met Joe and Sam back in 2010, it was not FDA cleared. It was used as an anti-snoring device. So they were selling it online. So as part of the commercialization strategy that I had struck with the university, that's how I got involved with Zzoma. I made an investment. We took the data they had put together, a prospective randomized trial, compared it to CPAP, found it to be equivalent. And we submitted the data to the FDA and received FDA clearance in 2011. But being a young, naive, former academic entrepreneur, I thought I was going to make a lot of money, guys. But it turns out, being a first of its kind medical device, there was no HCPCS code. So that was my introduction to, wait a minute, you have to have a reimbursement strategy in addition to developing a novel piece of technology. Wow, how about that? That is a thought. So in 2011, 2012, after we got approval, and there is no HCPCS code, around the same time, it became a passion project. If people aren't familiar with Temple Health, it's a safety net hospital in Philadelphia. And so I was working on two concurrent companies at one time, one being 2Z Medical, developing Zzoma and commercializing it, and the other COPD. In both cases, there was no reimbursement for both pieces of technology. And so I was getting I was being very creative about how to market and sell the device, as well as other services around it.
Very good. Well, how in the world have you transitioned that into also this world of value-based care with Green Key Health?
When we were developing, commercializing Zzoma, what we tried to do is find its place within the market. And so obviously, for a lot of people, CPAP is, the gold standard to treat OSA. And as you know, many people cannot tolerate CPAP, or they can benefit through combination therapy. So what we tried to do during the early years was essentially find how it can augment and help people in that context. But from a reimbursement strategy, what we did is we started looking for ways to incorporate it into what's called value-based care, which is really a very simple construct where it's coming up with solutions that improve the quality of life for patients, but somehow reduce total cost of care. And so learning about that in the day, we started developing ways in which we would incorporate Zzoma into different clinical pathways as part of comprehensive sleep programs with payers. And so for people that were on CPAP therapy but couldn't tolerate it, we would incorporate the Zzoma into that therapy to augment or to backfill. And so looking for ways where patients could be served, keep patients engaged, and then that would translate into, of course, them having a better clinical outcome. But from on the payer side, it would reduce total cost of care. And so we started doing that with sleep. We then dovetailed it into some of the work that we're doing with COPD patients. It's the same kind of doctors and pulmonary clinics across the US. I developed the COPD technology as a digital application to remotely monitor COPD patients. And that piece of technology, I was the first in the country to structure contracts with Horizon Blue Cross and HCSC, in which we would risk stratify patients in terms of risk and clinical risk and financial risk. We would then set up a program in which we would deliver a set of services, technologies, and care, again, to the point of doing two things: improving quality of life and reducing total cost of care. So a lot of that was just learning how to actually structure a program, how to contract with the payer, how to do the actuarial analysis. And when you think about value-based care, a big component of that is risk. So risk is associated with, you have to make a promise that you're actually going to deliver the care and services. And if you don't get paid. So since there was no reimbursement strategy in the fee-for-service world for Zzoma originally, as well as for COPD, I learned how to develop programs in which you can create a business case and a business model in which you can serve your mission, but actually have a margin around with it so you can develop it. So that's kind of how we've evolved over time. So today, Zzoma is an out-of-pocket expense, but we have developed new technology called Zzoma Plus, which we're taking advantage of the new HCPCS code that came into existence January 1st of 2024, based on the work of Philips Respironics and Night Balance. They acquired, there's two devices, electronic positional therapy, and we've developed a similar technology, except we incorporate it within Zzoma. So in many ways, it's highly effective, except, we're going to be bringing that to market in 2025 under that reimbursement code. But our primary focus is, and our passion project is Green Key, which is really value-based care, contracted with payers, serving patients and providers.
So, Doc, I wanted to have several questions, but if we could first start off going back to Zzoma, could you talk a little bit more about the product and how it works? I mean, we hear so many things about positional therapy, and you have, for example, little cushions that you can wear on your back like a belt strap, and then you have little sensors that'll kind of give you a little buzz.
Yep.
Could you talk a little bit about the actual product?
Sure. So I'll talk a little bit to give context for those. Some people that are diagnosed with OSA, there's a pretty good percentage of them. On the conservative side, around 25% of all people diagnosed with OSA are what they have positional OSA. So their AHI is above 5 when they're supine on their back. But if they're off their back, they have normalized breathing. And so in the earliest days, and this has been recognized since the 60s and the 70s, that breathing is easier when you're off your back. And so one of the earliest techniques for people to normalize breathing at night was to sew tennis balls into the back of a t-shirt. It's the classic tennis ball concept. And doctors would often suggest that as a potential therapy to resolve an issue with a patient. Joe Crescetti and Sam Kratchman essentially just took that concept and developed Zzoma, which is essentially a Velcro belt that's worn on the upper torso. But on the back, there's a piece of hard foam wedge that prevents the patient or prevents the person from being on their back or going supine. And so they essentially took the tennis ball technique, developed a piece of technology that is comfortable to wear, easy to use. And if you think about simplicity of use, putting on a belt and just going right to bed, it's very easy to do relative to more complex electronics or CPAP. So the device itself is simple, highly effective for those with AHI less than 30 with mild to moderate. So, but that simple design is really tapping into a larger concept, which is there's a number of people on CPAP, not on CPAP, that can benefit from positional therapy. And so not a lot of physicians look at positional OSA or incorporate it into their thought process. And so a lot of what we've been trying to do, along with other people, Philips Respironics, that are developing positional therapy, are trying to educate physicians around this particular piece of technology and how it can be incorporated to benefit their patients.
Yeah, Michael, I actually used to sell that product. I was part of a two-team person that was driving that for Philips Respironics. So it was painful because it was expensive and there was absolutely no reimbursement. And matter of fact, tried to sell it to Robert at one point in time, and he didn't find it as interesting as I did. But I think one of the interesting parts of the journey, though, and you kind of touched on this, is really educating physicians because just like what we see in oral appliance therapy and some of the others is sort of this sunk cost fallacy that, we can continue to just believe in CPAP as the standard of care no matter what. And so how do you think, as you begin to approach, treating positional sleep apnea, what are you learning? Because I realized early on it's really hard to break that cycle. Physicians continue to believe in CPAP. They double down on it. We continue to invest in it instead of really taking a step back and asking the harder question, was it really appropriate? And would positional therapy be the better option for that patient rather than trying to, blow the airway open with positive pressure?
Are you a sleep tech looking for new opportunities? Well, Medbridge Healthcare is one of the largest employers of sleep technologists, and they are growing. If you are a sleep technologist interested in a new position, potential paid relocation, or looking for a career advancement, consider a career with Medbridge Healthcare. Now back to the show.
That's a great question, and it looks like you and I have similar histories with Robert trying to incorporate positional therapy into his business.
I'm sorry. I just need the insurance to pay for it. That's all. I just need the insurance.
You're so greedy, man.
I know.
So I think in my journey, it's been a very interesting journey. And I'm going to answer it by blending my experience with also COPD patients. We were in North Philly. 70% of the patient panel we were interfacing with was Medicaid, right? So we had to figure out how to interface and make a difference without having traditional fee-for-service reimbursement or other mechanisms by which we can, serve and help people. So it made us become really creative. And one of the major learnings that occurred as I learned more about value-based care, I started to see two worlds. The payer world being, how do we keep, costs? How do you manage a large population, keep costs down, but yet get good outcomes, right? And how they think about the world. And insurance companies, right, at the highest levels are staffed by all the chief medical officers, but there is an army of actuaries, that have to help inform the decisions that are being made by chief medical officers. But at the same time, how to not go bankrupt, right? And so that learning about that world gave me context when thinking about outside of it with a physician interfacing with a patient who needs therapy in a fee-for-service world, right? Well, CPAP's paid for with that therapy, and so it's just easy. That's just the mechanism. And so, and then in my understanding of outside the insurance world, it's how do you get paid to serve the patient? And so you got to make it simple and people got to make money. And so the structure that's developed over the last 25 years, is a CPAP for all approach, right? Because to serve patients, providers need to get paid and everybody in the ecosystem. And so that's how the world is set up. It's always been set up that way. It's only been in the last 10 to 15 years in which new models of thinking where you create alignment among everyone. And that's hard to do, right? Because if you build a big hospital and you got to keep the lights on, right? You've got to bring patients in, you've got to serve the patients, and then you got to get paid by the insurance companies. In a value-based care world, if a payer says to a big hospital, hey, we want you to go at risk, not get paid until 18 months from now, then the hospital goes bankrupt. And you could apply that to any business, a DME business, our business, a med device. So there's a tension between the existing fee-for-service world and new ways of thinking. And that's completely normal, because if you change too quickly, you could lose your business. And so what I've learned is that I've spent thinking about, how do you not break the system? How does everyone get there, right? How does everybody make it to the promised land? And it's going to happen slowly. In some cases, people have to take risks. But it's real. I find it to believe that you can create really great ways to help patients faster and better as part of these programs. But it's definitely not easy. And things like Zzoma are really helpful because it's a simple device. So quality of life goes up. It's not a big interface, right? It's really cheap. It doesn't cost that much. And so if you're an insurance company, like, I don't have to pay for CPAP, right? But you still have to serve a large population. So these are complex questions, and we're just trying to, we're all trying to do the right things. But when you introduce new technologies, you can't break the system at the same time.
So Michael, I'm really curious. So you're an academic, but you're speaking like a healthcare marketer. How did you get that experience? I mean, I know you said that you had an earlier startup, but I'm just curious how you were able to stumble through that.
So I knew nothing about healthcare. My first startup, within 3, I was selling software to help physicians and researchers make faster decisions. And so that was I was just trying to build technology, and I was thinking most of the people I was interfacing with were academics. And so having that academic background, I could walk in and work with academic researchers and clinicians, and that was a comfort level. But then when you're an entrepreneur, you have to build a business from scratch. So I've done 4 businesses where I'm employee number 1. And being employee number 1, you have to raise money. And that teaches you, oh my goodness, I have to go raise money. And so the first call was to my mom, and I started learning how to be a marketer. I said, this is going to be the best thing that's ever happened, Mom. We're going to make a difference, so I wasn't always successful, even with my mother. So I was
going to say, did she invest? That's the question. She
did invest, but she did not invest based on my idea. So I've learned how, I don't know if I'm good, but I've crafted how to influence people to make decisions that involve a high degree of risk. And so when you're employee number 1 and you're raising money, you're going through a stage of development, particularly on new technologies like Zzoma and COPD or many other things, in which it's blind faith, right? And you have to believe in what you're doing. And that belief helps you become a marketer and say, this is going to work. And many failures along the way, and you keep going. But I think I've learned to be an academic, but at the same time, I got to be a sales guy. I got it right. But I've not been successful with Robert, of course, on my positional thing. No. Value. That's exactly, Robert. Value-based care, where we align financial incentives and everybody wins. See, that's right. And that is the superpower. I'm plugging value-based care as what I call a superpower, because it's a way to align all the financial incentives. What happens, by the way, is total cost of care goes down, people's revenue goes up, interestingly enough, but the patient really benefits in the end. You really get high quality scores in that context.
So there is a critical question that I have to get in before Jerry cuts us off. And it is, did you or have you considered the alternative marketing campaigns that Emerson and I gave you for Zzoma at the National Sleep Meeting? Because Zzoma shouldn't be positioned as the CPAP alternative. It is that there are other ways to position it. Emerson, do you remember what you called the the Zzoma, it's like we're on your side, or you had some catchphrase that was
it was great.
Yeah,
it was great. We have, and that's part of, we are going to be unveiling our new brand, Green Key Health. And as part of that rebranding, you're going to see many of the ideas that you guys suggested about Zzoma. So there's this conversion. We've seen the light, gentlemen. We've seen the light.
That's awesome. It's a great product. And, just the fact that patients have an alternative. But, yeah, we were playing with some of that language, and it was a lot of fun to do that with you that night. And
Yeah, it
of
was.
course, we were thankful for you hosting us as a part of such a great event. So thank you for that.
That was a lot of fun. It was great.
Oh, it definitely was. It was an old-fashioned kind of night, if I remember correctly. So
Yes, it was. It was.
Well, Doc, it's been a pleasure. We sincerely appreciate you joining, but we are out of time. Where can people get more information about you, the products, and the company?
So right now, before we do our great unveiling of Green Key Health in about a week, you can go to www.zomoosa.com and you can see the product Zzoma. There's a sneak peek to Zzoma Plus, which is the electronic positional therapy that's under development, as well as some clinical coaching applications we call Zzoma for Life.
Awesome. Thank you. And we sincerely appreciate you joining. And folks out there, thank you so much for joining us once again. It's been a pleasure. And we thank you for all of your support, all the likes, the subscriptions, the shares. We can't thank you enough for that. Please continue to do the sharing, because that's how we grow. And you've been there all this while with us. A huge thanks to our sponsors. We can't thank you enough. We are doing this with your help. Until next time, we say thank you and lights on. Before we go, we would like to thank our sponsor, Medbridge Healthcare. Medbridge Healthcare is developing innovative inpatient, post-discharge, and population health programs to screen comorbid conditions, diagnose and treat sleep disorders. Learn more about their innovative solutions and career opportunities at medbridgehealthcare.com. Once again, you can learn more about their innovative solutions and career opportunities at medbridgehealthcare.com. All right, it's time for some post-cals. Somehow I get this feeling we get smart people on this show. Would you agree? Disagree?
Oh my gosh, we definitely keep getting entrepreneurs and people that are thinking of really unique solutions. It was fun to hear him talk about where they're taking their company. As we suspected, I mean, they're thinking outside the box. They're capitalizing on what Philips built and then backed away from, which was surprising to all of us. But it's interesting how I think we talked a little bit about this in pre-cals. It's really hard to get anyone in healthcare to want to spend money out of pocket when they think their insurance should cover it, and that makes bringing innovations like this to market difficult, because without a billable code, it makes it so hard to sell it. Because I think some people have an entitlement mentality. If I have insurance and my insurance doesn't cover it, then maybe I shouldn't have it. And that makes it really difficult. So having that code now for their solution, I'm sure, is extraordinary for their growth. And I think what it allows for is to see what their innovation brings next and what they're going to be announcing in the future.
The other interesting thing I thought was the fact that he was bringing up value-based care, and that particular topic has been bounced around for a while now. I mean, back when I was just getting into healthcare here in the United States, and I started hearing that term, but nobody seemed to really understand what was going on. But you're hearing more and more these days. And Robert, you kind of dug into that when you during our conversation with him. What were your thoughts on his answers regarding that?
Well, I think the good news for him and the potential clients that he is going to onboard with Green Key is that he's lived in that space already for the COPD patient population. And there is a component of it that is a digital connection to the patient. So he sort of understands the IT side of things, but I think more importantly, he understands that it's at risk. So he's putting real money on the line to provide services to these patients and ensure that they have the right type of care. But then also adherence is going to be key, as he delivers and brings those patients, through their healthcare journey to produce a lower cost of care and produce savings to the system so that he's able to benefit in the savings. So I think that he's going to be okay in the sleep apnea world because he certainly understands it. It's just, I know that when we throw out the term value-based care, I mean, you almost roll your eyes these days because nobody really has a value-based care program, sort of. So it'll be interesting to see what the outcomes are because, that's going to be where the proof is when he's able to show that he's truly saved the healthcare system money. The patients are healthier, have a better quality of life, then the outcomes will speak for themselves.
Well, we're looking forward to it. I think we all are. So,
yeah.
With that being said, I think it's a good time to close.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, folks out there, thank you so much once again. And until next time, cheers.